Hey everybody, welcome back to Battle Ready Inc. So today for you, we're going over MirageGaogamon Burst Mode now. Finally having enough support for this deck to actually run its own like tribal version of its deck. Very excited for this deck. I know a lot of people are excited for something else blue to play. Moving on from the past ones that we've had that were pretty meta, now we're going into something else new. And I think the Mirage that we already had was pretty great, but he needed some support to help boost him up himself, and I think we're now at that point. So hopefully today's deck profile will do everything you want from this. I'm pretty excited for this. I'm excited to see it on the table a whole lot more. It's very cool. It's a very fast deck, definitely reminiscent of Garurumon X in that attack over and over and over kind of mentality here. So definitely should do a little bit of homage to that. Also excited to show off our new memory marker today. This is Minomon here for all you Wormmon fans out there, or just Imperial, Dino B, Stingmon fans. Really cool memory marker here. This is handmade out of clay, hand painted as well, all by my wife, Digimon. This is our Patreon reward for the month, but you can also kind of bypass that if you want and go straight to the source and go to her Patreon page. I'm not sure if it's posted just yet or not, but super cute. Also on her Etsy page, you can find all the previous memory markers that we've had on the channel. If you need a Demi Vmon to go with your Minomon here, then that's going to be a great place to go check out. There's also some bundles and things like that, so some of them have gone away, but you can still find a few of them in the bundles. So if there was one that you're missing out on, definitely a little bit more affordable to pick up multiples now. Also, if you guys are a fan of buying cards and singles online like I am, I recommend checking out cardtrader.com. I'll have a link in the description below that you can go and use to sign up. You'll instantly get a free $2 to use on cardtrader.com. It's a great website because if you use their Card Trader Zero program, what they do is they gather all the cards that you're buying at their warehouse, and then they ship them to you for a single shipping cost. It sucks when you have to pay more for the shipping than you do the cards themselves. That's when cardtrader.com comes in clutch. So just use my link, go sign up, and get yourself free $2 and go start buying some singles. Alright, so as always, I got the whole deck profile pulled up for you guys so you can kind of follow along with us here. We are at 53 of 50. That is just because the ones down here at the bottom are just going to be talking points at the end that I just wanted to cover that I chose not to include into the main deck. You'll notice the deck is pretty tight. We don't have a whole lot of wiggle room in this deck, simply because of the level 7s that we were forced to run. We also do want to run them, as well as the Tamers that also benefit the deck a whole lot. So ends up making the deck pretty tight overall. We're only running the 12 level 3s. I've seen some people cut down like one more level 4 here, and then go down to, what is that, 10? I don't know what my math is here. 10 level 4s. But yeah, it gets pretty tight. Also, our level 5s here, I'm one higher than normal, simply because of the split that we have going on here, which we'll explain when we get there. So let's go this card by card. First off, for our baby, I went with Wanyamon here just to, when attacking, if you have a blue Tamer, draw one. This is like the Koromon that red runs. Like, it's our most, like, it's our easiest way to guarantee that we get that draw every single turn, just for that consistency. This deck is really strong, so we want to make sure we see our pieces as fast as possible to maintain how fast the deck is. I decided not to go with any kind of DP boosting simply because skip to over here a little bit, but we are running the Nikolai from BT11. It gives your Gaomon or Gaogamon in its name jamming for the turn. So that's why I chose not to go with any kind of DP boosting baby. I always like to draw ones when at all possible. So for our Gaomons here, we got an on-play searcher, reveal 3, and 1 Gaogamon its name, and 1 blue Tamer among them to your hand. I love that they thought ahead on this BT11 one, and they made it just a generic blue Tamer, so Nikolai or Thomas works. And since both these Tamers share the same Digimon in different regards and everything like that, different shows and whatnot, but still it's still the same rookie. So that's really cool that he works for both. I'm very appreciative of that. Inheritable, when attacking once per turn, if you have a Tamer in play, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hands. So some solid little bit of removal there. Memory blockers can be definitely a big burden for this deck, so having this like reliable way to just clear a memory blocker off the field is really nice. Also, it returns it to the hand, so if you're familiar with this deck, anytime your opponent's hand size increases, we trigger a lot of effects, so that's just another way to guarantee that you're going to get that trigger. So really cool stuff. Great Gaogamon for sure. This one here, on play, both players draw a card from their deck. That's okay. It's from EX4. Your turn once per turn. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. Now that one is powerful, so we're going to definitely be triggering this one a whole lot. This is probably my favorite inheritable. The bouncing level 3 one is cool and all, but we have other ways to also return cards to hand, so I'm not too worried about triggering these kind of effects, and this gain 1 memory is going to be super huge. And then rounding it out, we got a new BT13 one. When attacking, both players draw the top card of their decks. And then inheritable all turns, when an opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, gets plus 1000 DP. This one isn't like super like pivotal for the strategy or anything, but I wanted to go with it because of the name. So it's got the synergy with the deck. So that's why I went to it. I mean, you can always give it jamming with Nikolai, and he can swing in. Use that when attacking ability if you want. So that's why he's in here and not like something else. Jumping up into our level 4s, you could also jumping back here, you could also run him at like a 2 of and run something like, you know, Seolamon or something like that. The memory blocker ones, I think I might got those two mixed up. I think I've got the rookie and the level 4 mixed up. But yeah, so you can run like your memory blocker ones. You can run the Evo reduction preventers. You know, all those. Like, there's plenty of text that you can run in as a 2 of in here and cut this guy down if you wanted. But again, just for the synergy of the deck. Next up, we got our EX4 Gaogamon. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to its owner's hands. Pretty simple stuff there. Pretty straightforward. But the inheritable is the main part. Your turn once per turn, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hands, gain 1 memory. Why these inheritables are so important is going to be for your other your level 5s and then your megas and things like that. When you're bouncing cards to hand on Evo, when Digivolving and you bounce a card to hand, you're essentially using these inheritables to gain memory back, making those Evo cost even cheaper. So that's why we're running these guys. Next, we got the BT11 Gaogamon. When attacking once per turn, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in your hand, gain 1 memory. Not too bad there. Not amazing. You don't really want to attack with your level 4s, but it is nice to have that. But the inheritable, when attacking, if you have a Tamer in play, return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to his owner's hands. Looks real familiar, because it should, because it's also on the Gaomon there. And then rounding it out, we have the BT13 one. This is the Gaogamon from this set. When Digivolving, if you don't have a Thomas in play, you may play one from your hand without paying the cost. Always nice to have these. Anytime you can turbo into your Tamers and not have to just hard play them is always nice. Now, keep in mind, you got to be really careful with these. I'm not a big fan of promoting up the rookie out of raising and then evoing into these guys to play off the Tamer, because then this is just sitting on field to get nuked by your opponent super easily. It's got no protection or anything like that. It's relatively low DP, so you're kind of setting yourself up. I'm a bigger fan of doing like the on-play Searcher Gaomon and then going into this Gaogamon afterwards. So you're building up basically 2 stacks at once, one in raising and this one on the field. So just makes more sense to me. Hard play Searcher and then Evo this guy to play out whatever the Thomas that you're going to hit off of that search is my thought process. Next, we got the BT11 Mock Gaogamon. I will say it was really difficult to choose. That's why I went with 3 different Mock Gaogamons, of which ones were my favorite. This one, when Digivolving until the end of your opponent's turn, this Digimon gains blocker, not overly crazy, and gets 2,000 DP for every 4 cards in your opponent's hands. That's pretty cool. If you don't have the jamming, this is a good way to get you a DP buff. And all turns, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hands, unsuspend this Digimon. This is kind of neat because it's an all turns when a card adds it to your opponent's hand. So if you do have that blocker, that's kind of neat. Because then you can actually like unsuspend and block twice with this Mock Gaogamon, even after you Digivolve on top of it, because you'll have that inheritable and the blocker from the when Digivolving. Then we have the new BT13 one. When attacking, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, the target of this Digimon's attack can't be switched for the turn. That's pretty cool. So some interesting things, your opponent can't use blocker. They can't use redirect abilities such as like Analog Man or Black War Greymon X. They can't use any of those redirect abilities, so you can just swing right on through with your 7,000 DP, assuming you got blocker from your Nikolai. And then again, the inheritable alternates once per turn when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, unsuspend this Digimon. So same thing basically there. And then this one's limited. The inheritable is limited to the when attacking once per turn. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, unsuspend this Digimon. So it's a little bit more niche to use, I would say, but it's when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon to its owner's hand. I think that makes up for it. While its inheritable isn't quite as just super broad, this one is still very much like useful because of its when Digivolving effect is super powerful. Like I said, you could Evo this, and if you have the other 2 inheritables that gain you memory, you basically are Evoing this for a 1 cost. So I'm a big fan of this one as well. Like I said, really hard to choose. They all have their merits and their uses. But the inheritable on this one is a little bit more harder to trigger. But remember, you can pick the order of your abilities, your when attacking effects, and things like that. So as long as you trigger this one last after your opponent has that 8 or more cards, then you're fine anyway. So you still get the same benefit as you do as all these other ones. So not too bad. Next we got the MirageGaogamon from BT11. I love this card. It was teched into so many decks over the past few formats, just here and there. People needed a generic blue mega, and this was always a great one to go to. When Digivolving, it is a 4 Evo cost. However, there is an offset to that. 12,000 DP, also very, very solid. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon to its owner's hands. If no Digimon was returned by this effect, your opponent adds the top card of their security stack to their hand. One way or another, you're putting a card in your hand. All right, that's the purpose of this guy. You're getting a card in your hand no matter what. All turns, once per turn, when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hands, gain 1 memory for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand. And that's going to be super, super powerful, again, in conjunction with like our rookies and our level 4 that are gaining us a memory when a card goes to the hand. So, you're going to gain 2 off of those, and then you're going to gain, 2 plus more really easily. So this is very much a free Evo cost kind of guy, especially mid to late game. Like every time you Evo into these are basically free. Super, super strong. So a big fan of MirageGaogamon for sure, the old one. Now we do have the BT13 one in here as well. It's correct. The correct way to word this, it's still useful. It's not quite as powerful. We're not trashing free security, which is always super good. Anytime you can trash security, like without actually having to check it, is always incredibly strong. But I still think this one is as well has its merit. So it's got evade, 4 cost Evo, same as the others, 12,000 DP. When Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Tamers to its owner's hands. So a little bit more match dependent, but still extremely strong in certain matchups. All turns, once per turn, when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hands, you may play one Thomas from your hand without paying its memory cost. I like this. There's no restriction on if you have one or not on field, whatever, it doesn't matter. So you can just go into this effect. And it's whenever a card adds to your opponent's hand, it doesn't have to be off of his when Digivolving effect. It can be the inheritable of when attacking, bounce something to hand. So there's numerous ways we can trigger this. And it's all turns, once per turn, so it can also trigger on your opponent's side as well, which is super, super good. My only issue with this one is you really need the inheritables for that gaining memory, because at 4 Evo cost, you're pretty much always passing turn. So you need to at least have one of those inheritables that gain you 1 memory when a card is added. So you're going to Digivolve, bounce that Tamer to hand, gain at least 1 memory back, and keep it on your side. So he's a little bit more like dependent on that sort of thing, but still not a bad choice, and he still is another MirageGaogamon for our burst mode coming up next. 5 Evo cost on top of level 6 normally, or you can burst Digivolve him, which is pretty much what you're going to always be doing. If you're not familiar with burst Digivolve, they're all the same. You are Evoing for 0 by bouncing a specified Tamer to hand. So that's pretty much it. 0 Evo on top of MirageGaogamon by returning 1 Thomas in play to its owner's hands at the end of the turn. Trash the top card of this Digimon. Now, if you don't burst Digivolve, you can actually just leave the MirageGaogamon on top of your MirageGaogamon. I don't know if you really would. That's a 5 Evo cost. That is definitely not easy. But when Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hands. Nice and generic. There's no stipulation to that at all. It's just anything you want just gets to bounce back to the hand. That's really cool. Then for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. So even if you do have to evo this guy for 5, you just got to remove a threat off the board because it's there. It's bad. You got to get rid of it. I don't have a Thomas in play. Oh well. Here we go. Burst mode on top of for 5. Bounce that target to hand, but then for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. So just like the old BT11 one, we're gaining memory back, which is going to be good. So you can offset that a little bit. You know, if you're going into this to remove a big threat, chances are your opponent's probably got at least 8+ cards in your hand. So then this turns into like a 3 evo cost, level 7 with 15,000 DP. Pretty good. And remove a body off field, I can't complain there at all. 3 evo cost, not that big a deal. When attacking, if your opponent has 9 or more cards in their hand, by placing cards from their opponent's hand at the bottom of their owner's deck without looking until there are 8 cards left, unsuspend this Digimon. That's really good. So we're basically attacking multiple times here. So a big fan of that. So again, another way to trigger us to attack, to unsuspend, to attack again. Really good, good Digimon here for sure. And then also keep in mind, if you do Digivolve for 0, you could just plus memory, just out the wazoo. Free memory for a 0 evo cost. Yeah, absolutely super solid. Next we do got our Tamers here, our Nikolai here, start of your main phase. I talked about earlier, one of your Digimon with Galmon or Gaogamon in its name gets jamming for the turn. You know, getting up to these higher levels can take some time, so getting jamming along the way is going to be really good. Your turn, when effect adds a card to your opponent's hand by suspending this Tamer, gain 1 memory. So then we're also finding other ways to gain memory. Again, with that MirageGaogamon, that 4 evo cost that doesn't gain us memory back innately, you need other ways to offset that. If you don't have anything in the source, you can always rely on your Nikolai to get you there as well. So while not quite as synergistic as Thomas and getting to play him for free, he is still extremely valuable for the deck. So I still want to run him in the deck. Again, that jamming is really good. Next, we've got the new BT13 one. We have a memory fixer for the deck. Yay, in Archetype memory fixer. That's great. Start of your turn, if you're at 2 or less, set it to 3. Your turn, when your Digimon with Galmon or Gaogamon in its name attacks by suspending the Tamer, both players draw the top card of their decks. That's great. So if you don't have anything to bounce for whatever reason, you can still tap this guy and both players draw a card. Boom, a card has entered your opponent's hand, and now you're triggering all of your effects when a card is added to your opponent's hand. Great. Also, you're increasing their hand size another way, so you could trigger this as well as triggering other effects and bump your opponent's hand size up like exponentially. So, you know, you could take a 6 hand to an 8, and now you're getting 2 memory off those evos and things like that. So, really good synergistic card. Big fan of it. But really, this is going to be the main one, your bread and butter of the deck for Tamers. BT4, way back there. There are box toppers of this guy, but not all tarts. On play, trigger, draw 1. Cool. Just a little bit of consistency there. Main, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, you may suspend this Tamer to unsuspend one of your Digimon with Galmon in its name. And this is just whenever, just during your main phase. So you don't have, you can wait until the attack is over, things like that. You know, you can see how the attack goes through. Then suspend this guy. If you have multiple Thomases on field, which is really cool, big fan I am of it, is like the burst mode, right? You tap this guy to unsuspend your Mirage, and then you go into burst mode to bounce this guy to hand, right? And then swing with the burst mode. He unsuspends himself. You know, he's also gaining memory, and then he unsuspends and swings again, right? He gains you all that memory on his Evo to play this guy right back out. Trigger, draw 1, main, suspend him, untap again to swing again. So the amount of attacks you can get in this deck really add up a lot, which is why I was saying it's really reminiscent of MirageGaogamon X, is because of all the amounts of attacks. Now, we don't have battle protection, but we do have jamming built in the form of Nikolai, as well as we just get big monstrous DP towards the end that just help us out a lot. So that is the core of the deck, but some talking points that I do want to go over were some option cards. So I did have to cut the option cards to fit in the amount of Tamers that we are running. Every Tamer here feels so needed that I didn't have the room for it, right? And in my experience so far, 3 burst modes for every burst mode deck is a must, okay? All right, so for the options here, the first one I'm a big fan of, Full Moon Meteor Impact. So this is basically a new Cocytus Breath for us. Return one of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hands. Then for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. Security effect the same as Cocytus, you're just going to bounce something to the hand. But again, that gain 1 memory is so huge, you're almost guaranteed just instantly just as good as Cocytus, right? If you're at 3, you bounce the 4th card to hand, you're good. But anything beyond that, it's instantly better than Cocytus. The second it hits 6 memory, it's just instant value there. So I'm a big fan of Full Moon Meteor Impact. It's just the go-to new removal blue card. However, it's really hard to fit it. Aside from dropping ratios a little bit, like the level 5s, yes, I do say you can drop one of these guys down, or pick the 2 you like and run 8 of them. So on and so forth. I've seen some people dropping the megas down a little bit here to a 3-2 ratio, but like this is the only one I really want to see. This is the one I want. I don't really want this one, but I do like it in here just for the ratios to make sure we always have a level 6 for the 7 to go on. Because once you get the burst mode in rotation, then you're going to be off to a really good position. So next is the blue memory boost, always a classic staple for blue. Just any kind of memory boost when you can fit them in is always great, just to see these pieces. Like I said, testing so far with burst mode, if you don't see the burst mode soon enough, it feels really bad, because a lot of these new decks really depend on seeing their burst modes, and that's when you just absolutely pop off and devastate your opponent is with them. So if you need to see it, blue memory boost is always a good one to go with. Now Sorai here, I think this is something that a lot of players aren't even aware of yet. A lot of the higher end players are keeping this on the down low. They don't want you to know about this. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know about it. Sorai, 4 play cost. Trash the top 4 Digivolution cards of one of your opponent's Digimon. Until the end of your opponent's turn, your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards can't attack. What are the 2 most prominent decks in this format coming at us? Shine Greymon burst mode, promoting up those Marcuses, and the Marcuses just punch you for 1,000,000 over and over in one turn with multiple security attack. Devastating. What else is devastating? Royal Knights. Okay, Omnimon drops and just, oh look, I'm looking at a field of 12 Digimon. Well, good thing they can't attack. So Sorai here just kind of shutting down your opponent. Granted, that was a bit of an exaggeration. If your opponent drops 12 Royal Knights on you, you're dead anyway, because especially if they all have blocker from the sister mons. But either way, so this is a great card to stop your opponents from just popping off. I really want to fit this card in here because I really think it's necessary for the format. If I was going into a high level competitive tournament, I would definitely try to slot 2 of these in here. I went for the more consistent build just to have fun with the deck and just to get to see all the cool stuff that it can do. Just popping off and just seeing all the pieces I want to see, choosing whatever I want. But if you can really nail down the important pieces and you can trim the fat off of this list, I will say it does have some fat on it. I've said it a few times, and you can fit in a couple cards. Definitely Sorai would be number 1 on my list. Now Full Moon Burst or Full Moon Meteor Impact, also a solid one as well. So big fan of all these cards here. They all could definitely fit into the deck and feel super solid. But just for the purposes of this deck profile, I went ahead and left them off. But that's going to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it this far and you haven't already, please like the video. It helps out the channel a ton. Leave a comment with whatever you want, and subscribe if you're not already. Again, if you made it this far in the video, you're not a subscriber. Clearly, you like the content enough to make it this far, so please subscribe. Get us to that 5K so we can do a big giveaway. Really excited for that. Gonna be some cool stuff. I've just mapping out all the things that I want to give away so far, and the list keeps growing and growing. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.